is not maybe real time as agile as I would like to be. Mostly it is postmortem, but at least I am thinking and I can realize this is what I thought about, or this is what I've been doing, and that reflection is happening, and that incubation of the thought process is there. Secondly, this need for a direction. Many a times it was like അടിച്ച വഴിയെ പോയില്ലെങ്കിൽ പോയ വഴിയ അടിക്കുക kind of a thing. It was just meandering along. And like Ganeshi said, there is a time for free flow, there is a time for thoughtful action as well. I restarted reading in these last couple of years. It was stuck for a long time. And now, like Nitya has mentioned sometime before, reading is now very slow. The progress is glacial because I'm seeing referent realities in each line. Before it was like I would finish maybe a book in a day and then go to the next book. It was a bit like binge eating, binge reading. Now, each line which is written by the author is called out. I can see it in my mind. It plays out and it slowed down. And there's lots of internalization which happens as well. I'm trying to read multiple different things at different times. Maybe it's a fiction by a lesser known author in the evening. In the morning, I just go and look at it. I would read one of the other books. There could be it could be either Sundarji's books, some of our notes. It could be something which is Dr. Khandwala's book, which I bought through. So anything and everything which is there, I read through, but it is at a different level. There is no intent in terms of completion. I look at it, I read it, I think about it, and then I continue on. And creative process has also restarted. Somewhere along the way, the creative juices have started flowing. Picked up my guitar, trying to learn new things. Then awareness of my mental blocks is something which has become clear. I do know for a fact that there are blocks. Some of them are identified. Some of them are glaring ones I tried to overcome. Some of them are still hidden, which I trip over. But tripping over, I realize there are blocks. Then awareness of trying to bring some of these things across to the next generation. Now, how? Being a bit strategic. Like Sir said, there is a familiarity trap. So what can I do? At the correct setting, introduce maybe a thought or a story. Share an anecdote about Feynman. Bought a book about Feynman, gave it to my son. So he started reading it. He reads, he tells his experiences. Another case, there was a spoon which was from North Korea. So created a setting wherein I put a challenge. There is something from this country where there was a news, North Korea in our house. So how did it come here? Is there a spy in the house? Can you find that? There is a reward to it. So it took them, I think, a couple of months and a few clues, but finally they found the spoon. Sometimes I would say you used it yesterday, or you just kept it away today. And then that curiosity was there, or some kinds of challenges, etc. So maybe not directly, but like Sir said, lots of beating around the bushes happening. Let's see where it leads to. Then blocks at work or teaching. And even talking about this concept, Sir, I wanted to start a company called the Slow Company. It's very simple. Nothing will get done fast. It has to be correct. Only then it will be there.
Very, very wonderful, original. Okay, very interesting. Come on.
So,
I want to apply there, Tintin.
It's a paradox with our work, but that is a challenge.
Right.
Then writing a book, changing my name. So I know there are so many blocks, but at least trying to identify them itself is that you know your enemy. And then from there, try to move on from there. And the biggest challenge moving from knowing to doing, I think that is like the case of this iceberg. But like with every single grain which is being added on, and I'm only seeing one part of the scale, I'm sure that it will tip, and then that momentum will take you there. Like the definition of inertia, which is the force which will keep a body from moving, or which once it starts moving, keep going unless there is friction, which will oppose and slow it down. So I think what I'm trying to do right now is build up that momentum so it will overcome the inertia here. Then about intentionality, that is something which I've realized. There were certain times when there was so much of unconscious thought and action, and things have happened to a certain level where I would intuitively know it would happen. Now, there are goods, there are bads as well. And having known that, I've realized, like what you said, the luck factor. So maybe I misrepresented a thing called luck, but actually I would have wanted to replace that with intentionality. Then also about my conflicts with respect to ethics, inertia, and also some of the negatives like my diminishing enthusiasm. I need to find ways to rekindle it. Maybe the curiosity. Now, talking about curiosity, I think 11 years back, I was at Alandure. Sir had got a new phone. So he was sitting there. He was looking at it, saying, "I need to increase the font size because I can't see as much as myself used to do before." Then he looked at it. I was fiddling with it. I found something had to be done to change the font. Since it's going to take 10 minutes, I'll just take a bath and come back. By the time I took the bath and came back, Sir had already figured it out and he had changed it to a comfortable font as well. So that curiosity and that enthusiasm, okay, once there is a way, I still remember that. And that is something which I want to imbibe and keep going as a constant. Then one thing which I was made aware was my alignment with nature process. I want to keep that through and try to bring alignment to my creature and continue it. Then the fact about the knowing, this was a
No,
problem.
wait. That alignment with the creature is something very, very, very important. Okay, like I think Ramesh has understood it and he's doing it because you are stationed in the creature. The so-called human. What is that? Okay, that organic structure is there. That walking erect. Okay, monkeys also walk erect mostly. That central nervous system, that bone, fresh heart, lungs structure. Okay, in that, by the sheer sparking, by the sheer power of the continuity of the process of that creature, the so-called human consciousness is there. That is to be really investigated, and you have to. I am just to give you the direction. You have to travel that distance and investigate it. Because when you enter into that tuning or correct sensing the creature, you're actually sensing the universe because the creature is 100% the product of the universe or the planet Earth and continuously serviced by the planet Earth, by the inflow of air, by the various elements entering into your body through the skin, and of course by the food. That is all. All these bank balances, big positions, chief executive, all these things are there, of course. That is to eat food. But the fundamental, that creature that was born on one day, which is growing up, and this is an opportunity. Beyond that, I don't want to continue. So we will be discussing on what I call a creative creature perspective, which you must have seen in our original program map. We will have a lot of discussion. It is nice that you already got it and you are registering it as a significant learning. You are the creature. Focusing on the creature, I would say you can manage anything. Okay? So listen to or remember some of the significant points Ramesh made that day. All right? So wonderful alignment to creature. That ultimately that is the I would say that is the centralmost pillar. Centralmost pillar. Because that so-called central nervous system, the so-called hormones, the so-called blood circulation. So the combined effect of this, all of them working at the same time, the consciousness is generated. And a great majority of human beings are just within the boundaries of that illusory consciousness. That is why our ancient mystics said the universe is an illusion. Not that the universe does not exist, but the way we see that illusion is controlled by our limited awareness of the self. You go to the creature. Creature is your available universe. You cannot go to the galaxies. You cannot go to the sun, to the moon, even to 1% of the planet Earth, which is so huge. Why, as I told you, like people are greedy about the big God and they are not happy about the little God in their own puja rooms. So, your creature is your universe, or that is the gateless gate to the universe. When you enter there, you will know it. So, that's a very significant aspect, alignment to creature. So, what will get aligned to the creature? What will get aligned to the creature? What will get aligned to what of the creature? What is the creature itself? For us, it is nothing but the anatomy, for example, or that image of the creature that you see when you are alone in your bathroom, that naked body. In fact, that is not the creature. I mean, that is the peripheral, the tip of the iceberg of the creature. But the creature is the universe of processes happening in that. So I'm just mentioning this because Tintin pointed out. We will definitely go into what we call creature perspective, a real discussion on the referent and the referent reality and the orbits of the variant and the invariant and the linkage network orbits of that creature. Definitely. All right. Okay. Yes, Tintin, proceed.
Thank you, sir. The other aspect which I realized was again the knowing problem. Now, I've got an extensive collection of music from many genres, many languages, many art forms across many places. Even you can even say jokingly, even Dr. T says I have a mini pharmacy with me as well. I've even saved some of the Saraswati gold which you had given me some 4 years or 5 years back, like the Holy Grail, sir. Kept it very securely locked up.
Uh, no. That the quality of that may be affected. Tintin use it.
Okay, sir. And
But
books.
no. Make a call to me before you use it.
Yes, sir. Then books as well, different categories, hundreds, maybe, I don't know, not thousands, definitely. Hundreds here from different years, collected from roadside to many places. Some of them are like written even before I was born, the original prints to latest ones, cartoons to books. And instruments, I have it from South America, wooden instruments, clay instruments, guitars, or different things at different places. But it's mostly about collecting. Now, anecdotally, I would say I once went to a friend of mine and he was sitting there listening some music. I said, "This sounds so beautiful." And he said, "Yeah. Do you mind? Can you give it to me?" And then he gave me a strange look. I said, "Okay." I mean, I said, I'll bring, I thought because he's very specific about it, he collects them, he archives them. And I said, "No, I will bring a drive and I will take it from you." And he has kept looking at me even more strangely. I said, "Okay, virus." I said, "I'll bring a brand new drive and you can connect and give it to me." He turns at me, gives a sigh and said, "Ada, I got this from you last year when I came to your house." So he took it, he started listening to it. I didn't even know I had it. That is the problem with this hoarding stuff. That's what I realized. And it's only recently I started enjoying it. I randomly look at it, randomly pick some of the songs and listen to it. Books as well, in randomness, whatever is that suddenly is available in that room, I will read it. Instruments, started picking up some of my guitar and stuff again. I repaired this there is a huge, I think it's almost this big a speaker which we use for in shows as well. Repair it.
Yeah,
I'm sure with my mic.
Tintin, here at this point, I want to say that perhaps you may feel a little bit uncomfortable thinking that you have a huge collection of all these things and you are not doing justice. Not necessarily, Tintin. Or, as you do, like uh, like the trees and the birds and the plants and the grass, uncountable, infinite of them are around. You cannot relate with every one of them, but you see that you look at it, that creature, the eyes of the creature look at it and see them. That's enough. So once in a while you go to your collection, look at the musical instruments, touch them with your love, talk to them, dust it, clean it and keep it. That's enough. That is your relationship. Because it's a musical instrument and because you can play that, you might feel that they're just lying there. Not necessarily you have to play every one of them every day or every week. Okay, that also is possible because your love for that, see, Tintin, if you have 25 guitars and 10 violins and 10 other things, okay, that's good. Your attention is capable of going to all those diversities. That's enough, Tintin. Get the point?
Yes, sir.
Like your attention should go to as much as possible to every tree or every branch or whatever possible. So, you should, like when you come across a most beautiful angelic girl before you, your attention goes to every detail of her. So that's enough. That's what you relate with her. Other than that, there is no way to relate with her. Like I was telling the other day to Vinay, you cannot have a direct pipe connection with your wife. You can have only an attention to her details. So similarly, I feel that you had a moment of sadness when you thought about plenty of music discs or whatever there. That's why you use the concept of hoarding. Whatever books and whatever musical instruments which you purchased at a certain point of time with such a love and concern. So don't worry about that. Let it be there like the trees in front of your house. But see to it that you look at them once in a while with all your appreciation. Touch them, feel them, clean them. That's enough. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Because doing that, you see, but when you do that, your sensitivities, the neuronal processes are connecting with them. Tintin. That's enough. Okay?
Thanks for that reinforcement,
All
sir.
right. Yeah.
These then about how sometimes we diminish ourselves because I think we said this once before as well. In our culture, or even in the Japanese culture, we do not boast or anything which you talk about assertion or confidence. In Malayalam, we say ahangaram. So it is frowned upon, but you have to understand what is the difference between your competencies and if nothing else, give us self feedback and then reinforce them and not diminish them. Then looking down, when I was actually going to present this today, I was thinking there were so many sessions we've had. I had taken notes as well. Then many of them Ashwati had recorded afterwards as well. So I was thinking, how can I do justice in one session to all of these? What is it that I will pick up, which I think strikes a chord and which I can detail into? The first, I picked up everything from my thoughts, and that's what I had put across in the first set of points. The second set, which we talked about right now, where my internal reflections about where I've come, using all of them or where I've thought about internalizing. And third is it which are the areas where I've taken in detail where I could talk about here. So one of the reasons, the first reason, three I would present here. One is that this was before the recordings. That's one of the reasons that I don't think we have a recording of this in the GCP site about the body and some of the details here. Second is that this is where I found it so interesting. I think I was typing away, copying away during the whole session furiously. And thirdly, when I went across in random and did like maybe a I Ching on the Genius Choice website, sir, the areas in which I had randomly picked up and listened to had talked about the body, intellect, and spirit. So the signal for me was that, yeah, it is right that I had captured these and then I can talk about them as well. So the next few areas.
Wait. And when you talk about the Genius Choice site, what do you mean?
Our YouTube, sir. YouTube.
YouTube site is not in the name of Genius Choice. That I tried, but again I could not. Most of the recent items are uploaded in a site where normally my site, Prasad Sundararajan YouTube.
Yes, sir. That's the one I was referring to.
Oh, okay, all right.
So we had talked a little about about as well, and on which I have some detailed collections here or recordings here, is about the body, B, the mind, and then the intellect. So we had talked about, a sir had given a detailed presentation about the body in one of the sessions. And in fact, I could recollect one of my friends telling me as well, uh, at that time in my school days, that I think where you are missing is that you did your studies and you finished it and you went directly into science, and you did not pick up on the biology part of it. So if you had still taken the subjects biology in your 11th and 12th, you would have had a much more cohesive understanding of both the engineering, the science aspect, as well as a human body, and how they are wonderfully correlated for you as an individual. So at that time, I did not understand what he was talking about. The referent was not clear. But when Sir presented this, the first thing which came to my mind was my friend Vivek's thought, or what he said to me then. So here, most of it is in terms of the detail, and I think beyond the detail, I would maybe request Sir's intervention as well. So we talked about, even above, about the lowly or the primary being, maybe the amoeba, it hunts for itself for food. We coming down to a earthworm. The earthworm is mostly a digestive system, elementary canal, over which there are muscles, and these muscles are connected through, and then there are sensory organs at the tip of its entity. So we talked about it, and the body is the first spoke of the wheel of existence. And within this itself, there are three core spokes, which is the digestive system, the endocrine system, and the nervous system. Now, the digestive system is something which influences the entire body process. And coming back to one of my favorite topics of interest as well, Ayurveda, it's that everything or anything is triggered or influenced directly or indirectly by the food which we take, how the digestive system, how healthy it is, etc. I even had a discussion once with a doctor who said mostly we don't get poor people in our clinics because they don't have much of these problems that rich people have. And they do not have much variety in their food and whatever they eat. And because of lifestyle, it's more complete and correct. And as Sir said, they are closer to the concept of Zen. I eat when I'm hungry and only when I'm hungry. And that too, whenever it's possible. They also do follow unconsciously the fasting, sometimes because it's not an option. There are 5 vayus which we had touched upon in terms of the body, and also the fact that coming to the elementary canal and the intestine system, it's like a big,
Tintin.
yeah.
Second one is not Amanan, it is Apanan, APAN. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. About what we think about as our intestine itself is a 25 feet tube, which we know the largest organ in our human body is the skin, and this is 100 times more than the largest organ, which is the skin. Now, thinking of that itself and internalizing that thought brings across to the enormity of this small intestine, the small intestine. And we talked about upavasa, about not eating food or controlling food. And in detail, Sir elaborated about how it is a food, how the body is inside the body. We have the digestive system, the intestine, and intestine has these ridges in it, and how the food is absorbed by it. It's like the follicles, and how food goes into it, and sometimes sediments get trapped in it, etc. Why the need to clean your body, and many other aspects of it. From there, we went across to the nervous system. Now, this was also an area of interest to me indirectly because Sir had taught me about reflexology. I read about it, and I also used to go to people who practice it. And there were times when I could identify core areas which are not at equilibrium with the sensation and the pressure they were applying. And there was a detailed call out by Sir about how the complex areas of the body, each part of the nervous system. And this is much, much, much more complex than the most detailed, let's say, I think, VLSI design, which I've learned or anytime tried to build chips on. And this is the human body, which has been there and which is with us and which is operating even when you talk about it, speak about it. From there, we went on to the hormonal system, where it is what works, what is not at work, and if it is not in harmony, all the pandemonium it causes. The pituitary gland, the adrenal gland, the pancreatic gland, how the hormonal system, the immune system, and the sensory system are working as a triad, and how they are all working across, and the details of it as well, and how immunity is driven by your thoughts, and how the digestion, the triggering of all the glands and everything, and the harmony and its cohesion. Then we talked also about the sensory system and how a biggest part of the brain is for the visual activity. And that's also something which I think is happening right now, because almost all elements of human existence right now is on the visual realm. We see movies, even there are videos for learning. There is even computers have come into a scenario where we talk about GUI design, graphical interface. You don't read books, you just swipe on the screen to read them. You don't turn the pages anymore. Tactile functions are being more lesser used. Even on phones, you can talk to Siri or any of the other applications in there, which can help you to open a web page, maybe book a ticket, book a taxi. So everything is happening at a visual level where you see it happening. The other aspect of it is also with respect to the sense organs. I think a long time ago, Sir had talked about a case wherein Shiva, you had asked her to walk with you blindfolded so that certain senses can be enhanced. I've been trying some of these kinds of things. When the current goes in the night, for instance, I'll use my memory and touch to try to go down the stairs. Sometimes even subconsciously, this is what is happening. Then try to sense and taste the food, try to call upon the senses of smell, the touch, etc. Playing the guitar with eyes closed is mainly with respect to your tactile sense and that spatial motor skills. So these were some of the things to be reinforced or just bringing across to our recollection here. Then we came across to mind, which you have talked about extensively. I think these may be areas more familiar with, but the body and its engines and all the components were something which we had talked about, I think, about 6 months back. And since it was an area where I had written down in detail, I took some of the areas from Sir's notes and put it across. One assignment which was given, Sir, I still haven't done, is the fact that we have to build our own presentation on it without detailed understanding and then present to the family. But that's something in my mind, sir. And coming to the mind, we talked about how anything and everything is driven by the mind. And this is what triggers people, be it philosophers, politicians. We went across to the Gordian knot. And
By Tintin, Guardian is Gordin.
thank you, sir.
All right.
Attention to detail.
No. That's okay. That's okay. It could be other things could be typing error, but this is a name of a particular thing. Therefore, I corrected it. Yeah.
Thanks, sir. And we talked about the fact how Alexander beautifully unraveled the mystery with a simple cut and using that metaphor or an analogy as to how we should enter into the puzzle of the mind. From there, we've moved on to the choices, decisions, and action. Again, coming across directly or indirectly to knowing, doing, and being about will, the intent, and the actions. And we came back to our good friend, the master cook or the cook at that time, and how his choice, decisions, and actions triggered the way for him to indirectly achieve mastery on something which he was already working with. So he had to take a beat around the bush and take 7 years or 9 years to learn mastery of swordsmanship to achieve Satori by cooking his last, possibly the last cup of tea to Shogun. And we also looked at how the mind is like a mediation between the organism and environment, a subtle concept, and something which Sir explained in detail by taking the concept of mediation. Now, for anybody who comes from maybe an IT background, it could be a little intuitive in terms of what is a mediation system or a mediation thing, but it is a concept which is very, I would say, very subtle, and I would say it took a lot of beating around the bush to be internalized. And understanding this, once it is understood, and even to understand it, it takes a lot of beating around the bush. And we explored the fact about the mind, how it is something which is an electrical field. And what is it? Is it something which is tangible? No. When we are thinking with the mind, but can we think about the mind? How do you measure it? By the neuronal electrical fields generated by neurons in the body. Before birth or after death, the mind doesn't exist. That electrical field isn't there. In sleep, it slows down. Maybe in meditation, it comes to maybe even an idling state. And we explored the concept of how every new input, every thought, any sensation is registered as a new neuronal unit in the mind. And then from there, we again went into a deep dive. So I went back to the body, to the brain, in fact, and we looked at the left brain, the right brain, and how each and every section of it had or has and is having an impulse. Actually, that is the correct word, an impulse which triggers actions and everything else in the body. How the neural networks are formed in each parts of the brain, how emotions, how they cause and how they trigger actions and impacts into the core, which we discussed about, which is the intestine, the body, the digestive system, and how this in turn triggers emotional conflicts and then into illnesses as well. Thought, worry can cause immuno disorders, is something which even the medical science is recognizing now. Now, how do we overcome this? Except only with overlaying and creative therapy. And in that way, we also connected back to the creative therapy which Vinaji is practicing in terms of a connection. And trying to go into the old thoughts and trying to move them away, you are still reinforcing them. Like rubbing salt over a wound, or like scratching a scab and then the wound reopens, as a maybe a simple analogy. And the only way is to generate new thoughts which are overlays, or by awakening other areas of the mind, which is where Sir made us to sing songs, try to write poems, go through different experiential, thoughtful actions, etc., so that different areas could be enhanced. So reading greater literature, we talked about it. Playing and listening to music. Even people who were not exposed to it are right now singing songs. Ramesh is now at it at a great pace. I'm sure after 10,000 hours, if I'm not careful, he will overtake me and leave me far behind. Then
Wait. There is a specific area of the brain for music.
Yes,
Therefore,
sir. Yeah.
it is not
Yes.
specific areas of the mind. Mind is nothing but the sound of the neuronal process in the brain. So you have mentioned what you call, there are different areas of the mind for music, brain for music. Yeah, all right, okay.
Thank you, sir. Then from there, we moved on to meditation. And here, again, the concept of neuronal firing was explained, and how, like a film which is running at a high speed, meditation is another way in which you can slow it down. And then is a way in which you can achieve Satori by finally coming to that stasis or that state of void or emptiness. From there, we again went into the intellect and the engines of the intellect, the three spokes of the self, and all the areas of attention, observation, perception, cognition, reflection, thinking, and then all the other areas of conceptualization, reconceptualization, imagination, visualization, projection, conversion, intuition, dreaming. Some of these we've touched upon. Some of these are areas which Sir said we will deep dive into. Especially, this is going to be a area which will be talked about in detail. We talked about projection and some of these in terms of the concepts and exercises which we are went into again back beating around the bush. We came back to knowing, doing, and being as part of the human entity. From there, moved on to will, which will be triggering it, which is reinforcing it, and coming back to again almost where we started, the thoughts about language and how language is one of the spokes of the entity along with intelligence and intellect, and how by maybe approaching it by trying to get into correct language, and that way we are trying to turn the wheel of intelligence, and that will again turn the bigger wheel or the gear of intellect, and how thoughts are disturbing us, and anything and everything is only about thoughts. Somebody else's comments influences, maybe small comments, bigger comments of people, then they trigger mental traps. And finally, anything and everything about how you approach things with your mind, your mindset, and how the Mindberg is controlled. And even in terms of a validation, Sir calls out how even mystics and sages were triggered by thoughts and actions of other people. The famous or the old sage Durvasa was very much feared about how he would get angered by thoughts or actions of other people. Then there is also about the intentionality is another thing we talked about, and why it is necessary to be selectively sensitive. This was feedback given to me a long time before as well, that there is too much of a degree of sensitivity and you need to learn to control it if you have to survive in this current world and even in your domain of work. So maintaining selective sensitivity, choice to higher grades of language, then changing gears whenever there is a nonsensical thought or some stupid discussions going on, while still remaining at stasis. And we also went back again to the body as to where the throat chakra was a point where the source of language is. And by being aware of it, there is a degree of language control which can be exercised. And how to change a disturbing thought by changing the syntax of the language. I could not recall much more in detail of this, but maybe if you could elaborate a bit on that, sir, it would be helpful. Today or sometime later. Then about how happiness and unhappiness is triggered by the stream of language, internal dialogues or external dialogues. And we went from there into some of the other areas as well about sound, about how mantram or mantras, we have a mantra here with us incidentally as well, are configurations of sound and the three categories of mantras and how they are used as well. Om, Hreem, Kreem, Reem, etc. If I remember. From there, we went into language as well about handwriting and mind. Sir had triggered a curiosity to me about graphology sometime before, but the actual extent of knowledge about it, I really came to know when we went to a session in Coimbatore once. I think there was an exhibition where there was a graphologist, and finally, Sir started giving him a session on graphology. And that's when I realized there was so much more in depth to it than the few books which I had read. It was just a tip of the iceberg. And how mindset can change the handwriting and vice versa. And this is where I think my writings had also stopped, sir. And with it, I come to the end of my notes and my presentation for the day.
Okay, brilliant. Another very detailed recollection of all the topics that we have gone through with all the sessions. It's quite point to point detail, every detail, and courtesy all your details that we again got many reminders and many concepts got cleared by sir today, like glimpses, speed traps, and creative therapy, etc. You have given so much time, sir. It's very praiseworthy, and to recollect, to get so much introspection, to find your learnings and correlate it with all the knowings that we have gone through these sessions is very praiseworthy, and it's almost a genius level. Thank you, Tintin. Brilliant.
Thank you, Navinji.
uh, Tintin, the concepts of um, the reading has become slow, and your concept about having a slow company. So I was like dreaming about it, and I was trying to buy into your dream and also being involved into your dream. So that was nice pointers, and it was again you touched upon the basics till the fine-tune complete gamut of learnings. So you took us through the complete journey and like a walkthrough of the last 9 months. So it was like a complete recap, and from there how each of that has impacted you, you were able to touch upon. So it's a nice journey, and yeah, thanks Tintinji for this.
Thank you, Ramesh.
Ashwati, come on.
Hello, Tintin ji. Again, a very elaborate and complete description of everything that we have uh, done so far and our journey so far. Um, so you have taken great efforts in identifying the important aspects, and and how you have applied it also in various instances is wonderful. uh, it's it was again another inspiring presentation, so thank you for that.
Thanks, Ashwati. I mean, my inspiration is in terms of the detail. One part is with respect to some of Meenakshi ji's sessions and how you and Ramesh ji usually present your presentations. Usually, I really like them because they are like a visual delight for me. I try to see how it is that I can bring up some of these things in. And there's also the fact that you've been constantly recording some of these sessions, which could mean that I could take down notes as well wherever it was relevant rather than trying to take them down verbatim. So thanks for that as well. Energy has shared a feedback. Let me notes. I ended your first session with a poem, Nitya. I think if you would compare it, I would think maybe you can just draw a line from any of these into these. So I was thinking at that day I talked about dissonance and cohesion. So I think Meenakshi ji has a different worldview, a thought process, and many other things. Some of these areas I think I correlate with some of your thoughts, and I think that's where the yin and yang of it comes through. I couldn't write fast enough. That's why I started typing it in before, and that's why I was able to represent at that end. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Parvati, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thanks, Tintin, because I had joined this platform sometime later. So many sessions had got covered before I joined. So this walkthrough has, given me a glance of what all have been covered, and how far the journey has been. What are the different areas that have already been covered. So I got a glimpse of all that, and it was precise, and still gave me insights about those classes. So thanks for that, and it was it gives me a different perspective now about some of the sessions that I have been attending. So it gives me some more insights and backgrounds, etc. So thanks for it. Very detailed compilation, and great. And also your journey also has been wonderful. I think many changes, and it must also be wonderful for you, and good.
Absolutely. I wouldn't change it for words, and especially my interaction with Sir, the trust and the days forward. And I'm happy with the feedback. It is detailed because Sir had said once that God is in the detail. So if I could approximate a little to it, I think that I'm happy it's been internalized. But I still think it's only a little bit of uh, whatever we've listened so far and what I could recollect and what I could put in the paper.
That's great. I mean, you captured all the thoughts very uh, in a good sequence. So now I am also able to remember. I'm also able to relate, and develop some reference also of those classes that would have happened. So thanks a lot for that.
Thank you.
Vinay, would you like to say something? Vinay?
Uh, Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you, Tintin for the detailed, wonderful presentation. As always, you keep a style of presenting your ideas. It's slow, clear, and very cool.
Thank
And especially the one point I noticed is the looking at the basics of things. And it's like the presentation itself shows. You covered almost all the basic points of our journey from November or October to this September. So it was truly beautiful. And definitely one thing is that you associated many of the things with your life experiences. So it just gives me an idea of implementation of those ideas in my life, in my life's situations. And definitely some of the points, I don't remember exactly, but many of the points were a reinforcement or reinforcement of implementing in our life. This when sir says one idea maybe one or two times, but whenever someone adds his or her experience to that idea, or they share their implementation of those ideas in each one's life, it just clear the doing part of it. Sometimes it touches the being part of it. So thanks a lot, and thank you, sir.
Okay, all right, Vinay.
Thank you, Vinay. You always were a person whose questions I found were Socratic whenever you asked a question or an observation. And it's also given me a degree of reinforcement where you pointed out that unconsciously I've been doing a bit of doing as well. So I think the critical turning point is reaching, sir. Thanks for calling that out.
One more question. I was about to ask a question, but it's not a Socratic question. But you told that you are going to start a company or something like that. I just missed that point.
Yeah, this was a concept, a thought which I had for some time, which is that everything is so fast. So why not start a company? The concept itself is the slow company. So there is no unnecessary sense of urgency. And whatever has to be done correctly and completely. Then, if you take Steve Jobs, for instance, maybe as a common example, is a case wherein the iPad, sorry, the I think the MacBook Air was brought across to him, the finished product and the product line. That means they would have done the design, the build, the prototype. That means the marketing team, the everything else would have been ready. And he said, please send it. He sent it back because he said, I can hear a sound which was heard by nobody else because they were expecting it, which was the sound of the fan. He said, I don't want a fan in my laptop. Please take it out and then bring back a new one. And that was how the first perfect and silent MacBook Air was born. Or even the iPad, I think the iPod, where it was brought to him, and you know what he did? He took it, he put it in the fish tank, and there were bubbles coming up, and he said, there are bubbles. That means there is air, there is space to compress it further. So I think that is slow company. And somebody had the guts to do it. But how to do it is the thought process again. And do it correctly and successfully.
Yeah, Anuradha, if you're there, would you like to say, respond something?
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Very, very, very loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yeah, it was a wonderful presentation, Tintinji. You had gone through the 9 months of learning in a very meticulous and detailed way. It was almost as if we are going through the entire session once again. It was a very good recap to us. And you have also wonderfully connected to your life and the way you have done various activities, what all you have tried to incorporate, and your awareness on what all things you need to do further. You've done a wonderful job of connecting the entire 9 months of your learning to what you are currently and what you'd like to be. Wonderful. It was wonderful hearing the whole thing.
Thank you.
All right, Anuradha.
Sir, I
bye.
have a question.
Yeah.
So about correctness and completeness. How do we know something is correct, and how do we ever be complete in something? Because there is always a step after what we have done that can also be done.
Yeah, it's a very, very creative question, Ashadi. In the previous session, not previous session, in the session of Ramesh, we discussed this. Ramesh used the concept of perfection. At that time, I told him perfection is much more generic, much more umbrella concept, and completeness is little more closer to the referent of what is possible. Yeah, the boundaries of completeness or correctness could be a matter of your judgment after clear attention to the details. Okay, even when you say a thing is complete, somebody else may find out some other lacuna and all that. But now thing can have a clearly defined, what you call, concrete, watertight contour by which completeness can be defined. For example, cooking of a tea can be complete in the sense of the perception of the agent, individual. You make a perfect tea, you make a complete tea, for example, according to your sensitivity to your doing and the sensitivity to the process outcomes of the tea. And you give it to someone, and that person may say sugar is little more, or tea could have been little less, and so on and so forth. In terms of that kind of a thing, in the design of a house, we have our designer here, Ramesh. He has made wonderful designs of so many things, something more than 300 designs. So that completeness is depending upon the definition given by the person who creates a thing. Like a poem. What is the completeness of the poem Solitary Reaper? What is the completeness of the so-called Shakespearean work? What is the completeness of a philosophical topic? So, but here the main thing is the attitude of the person, the mindset of the individual to make it complete. These are the higher order examples. At a silly level, in a government office, to do the work of the day completely. Most of the files are incomplete. Most of the works are incomplete. They just go on extending the time and things like that. So that's a very peripheral level. But in our level, your question is very clear. For example, you are an architect, you work on it, so many versions of a design. You can continue to do so. There is no end to that. So completeness is finally decided by the creator. Okay. So even when you are the creator of a design, somebody may come and say it is not okay because individual differences in perception. But you should be convinced about the completeness that you are able to achieve. If a critic is telling a lacune, oh, I see, I did not notice that, you can correct it. That is again the mindset of your completeness. That mindset is more important, Ashwati. Your love for your mother. You are sure that you love her. She may have complaints. You correct it, whatever. But you must be absolutely firm and confident about your completeness. Something is missing, okay, you are ready to improve it. That again indicates your completeness, sense of completeness. If someone points out, it may be a servant, it may be a visitor, it may be somebody unimportant. If that person points out a lacuna or a missing element in what you have done, what you have told, what you have achieved, or what you have accomplished, incorporate that. That means you are ready to that means your mindset is oriented towards completeness. That's all basically about. Okay? At your level. If you talk about the completeness of a government office worker in India or a normal factory worker, that's all. We don't have to even discuss it. For instance, about 5 years back, I met an entrepreneur uh, uh, who was traveling with me from Coimbatore to Mumbai. So he's basically Tamilian, but born and not maybe brought up in Kerala. He had a tea packaging unit in Fort Cochin. So he was in the process of shifting it to Coimbatore. So he was going to Mumbai, some tea board or something like that. Then I asked, why are you shifting it to Coimbatore? Which he has been running for some 20 years. His father started it. Then he said, there in Kochi, the 5 o'clock bell or whistle, everyone will stop the work and get the address and they go out. Some packages are not completed, some carton is not completely closed, the floor is all dirty, things like that. And the next day they may come and clean it and pack the remaining. But in Coimbatore, the 5 o'clock time is there. But they will, let's say if a carton is half packed at 5 o'clock, they will complete it. They will what you call paste it and pack it and properly place it in where the packages are kept. Sweep the floor, everything is clean, and then only they will go. Let us say that's an aspect of very peripheral level of completeness. In general, there is a complaint about Indian workers, which some of the CEOs of the Western country talk about that. Indians do not have any sense of completeness. They somehow finish a work. Somehow finishing a work also is lack of completeness. Get it, Ashwati. But they are all not applicable to you people. You are all very wonderful people. But you can have that attitude of completeness. As much as possible, you give the complete thought. You make a presentation, not necessarily in this. Here in this forum, you can have you can freak out. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to be perfect in your presentation like Ramesh is doing. For example, Ramesh, which I have said the other day, he is presenting before we 9 people. Whichever he presents, we don't even bother to look at that. For that presentation, he worked for 5 hours, and I don't know in which way it can be improved. I don't know at all. So that is his mindset of completeness for example, Ashwati. All right. But even for him, when he look at it a second time, he may find some other areas of so-called extension or expansion or improvement or evolution. So do not worry that much about completeness. You have to be responsible to you. You have to be very ethical. You have to be very sincere to whatever you do. That is, after all, about completeness. Not the theoretical completeness like Rigveda says, Purnatsya, Purnamadaya, Purnat, Purnamudachyate. Even then, that completeness does not mean a watertight boundary. Yeah, this is the completeness of this. But if you look at the nature process, we can say every rose flower is complete. You cannot find any defect. That is the ultimate design. And almost all the rose flowers come to that completeness. Every tree comes to its full bloom. We cannot suggest any errors or incompleteness in the context of even a blade of grass. But the blade of grass has been the same way 1,000 years back, right now, and it will be in the future. But for human beings, there is continuous evolution of what all activities we do. Therefore, for human beings, there is a lot more scope about finding new dimensions of completeness. That's all. But in the nature process, all of them are complete. But at the same time, all of them have been like that for the non-background of centuries, and they will continue like that. But by the design of the nature process, they are all complete. But human beings, they are doing many, many, many new things. So in that sense, like Tintin pointed out, we are not yet sure what is the possible probable completeness of a mobile phone. We are not sure what is the possible probable completeness of an automobile design. So that is there. But whether a given design is complete in its at the level of current knowledge available about it, current possibilities of design, current possibilities of setting, current possibilities of process, current possibilities of process. Like Ashwini knows the architectural background. So whether you are fulfilling all the required details of architectural design concept into the design of something, you have done it. What to the best of your sincerity and commitment. That is completeness for you, Ashwati. There may be a different level of completeness for the same design with your what you call Christopher manager. That is his level of completeness. But if he see that you have done it fully, it will be very obvious there, and he will appreciate your work. That's all. Okay. And
Thank
then
you.
you talked about completeness and what else?
Correctness.
Correctness. Yeah, correct is a different. Correctness is little more practical. Correct. The concept of correct is always based on some parameter. Ashadi. Okay. Always based on some man-created parameter. If we apply that parameter to nature, we cannot say whether a rose is a correct design or not. But in case of human designs, correctness is based on some parameters we have already created. Like architectural design, there are certain parameters which you cannot violate, whether you have correctly conformed to that. Perhaps you have heard about a recent accident of a bridge being constructed in Ernakulam. They did not follow the correct proportion of concrete mixture. As a result, the bridge collapsed. So, correct proportion, correct composition of materials. Most of the, at least studies show that 60% of the Indian products are manipulated. They do not do the correct composition. They do not use the correct material. They always use a little substandard material and all that. So, because there is a standard about what is being correct, like the Indian Standards Institution suggests certain parameters, you follow that. That is correctness. For example, mathematics, it's all about correctness. 2 plus 2 is 4. So you have to follow that. Then measurement of weight, kilograms or speed, etc., etc. That correctness, if you are aware, do it, and that's all. Correctness is based on some parameters. For example, a certain device should be a certain gear when it is cut in a lathe. It should have this kind of an angle. Then only it will work. So you set the lathe or the CNC machine according to that. Give your correct attention. So we can have correctness in other ways. Whether you have the correct attention, whether you have the correct ways of doing this. That's all, Ashwini. Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, then. So time has gone beyond the limit, but I really appreciate Tintin to cover up this much of topics, and he almost managed the time. He increased the speed when he realized that he may not be able to give details about the remaining points. But as I said, all these presentations are primarily for the one who has presented it. So his learning. So he understood what he has understood from these points. But like Anuradha mentioned, when we witness this presentation, we also get an opportunity to, rewind the session, which will reinforce some of our understanding. We may get some new clues when we listen to the same thing again. Like you read a book a second time, you see something new. So that is the only thing which I am expecting from the other people. But the idea, beautiful. So once again, as usual, I appreciate first Nitya for being there. I really
Thank you.
Vinayla and Amey Rajarshi. As usual, Ganesh would say something of it. Would you like to say something?
Okay.
I was thinking I'm one of those students who's never found this, but just comes and collects all. It's raining blessings. 9 or 10 are going to happen. Thank you very much. Rameshji, I was, thanks to Ameya, I was able to see your presentation and hear the entire recording. Awesome. Thank you, Tintin, for today's session, and Nityaji, of course. I was lucky to sit through her session because it was the very first one. So I think a couple of observations, if I may say so. I think I observed, Tintin, when people compliment you, there is this inherent urge for you to return the compliment in some shape or form. So with me, you try something, don't compliment back. So just take the compliments from me and accept them and be happy with that. So that's number one. Number two, there's so much of learning. For my benefit, if I were to force you to pick the three highest intensity learnings from all of what you have reflected upon, which would be those three?
Okay. To answer that, let me also do some soul searching. Bear with me for a moment.